year 1900, off the coast of the remote Greek island of Antikythera, a group of sponge divers were caught in a violent storm. They took shelter near the island's rocky shores. When the storm passed, they decided to dive in the new, unexplored waters. One of the divers, Ilias Stadiatis, surfaced moments later. In terror, he spoke of a horrifying sight in the deep, a shipwreck, littered with the grotesque corpses of men and horses. The captain, believing the diver was hallucinating from the pressure, went down himself to check. He returned with the bronze arm of a statue. It was not a nightmare. It was a treasure. They had stumbled upon an ancient Roman shipwreck, a time capsule from 2,000 years ago, filled with priceless art. In the months that followed, in the world's first major underwater archaeological excavation, they recovered magnificent marble statues, beautiful glassware, and exquisite jewelry. And among these treasures, they found this: a lump of bronze, corroded and calcified, roughly the size of a large book. It was mistaken for a rock at first. It was ignored, left in a crate for months at the National Museum in Athens. No one knew it at the time, but this ugly, corroded lump of metal was infinitely more valuable than all the beautiful statues they had found. It was a piece of technology so advanced, so complex, it would rewrite the entire history of science. It was something that simply should not exist. The impossible gears. For months, the corroded lump of bronze sat in a box at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, a forgotten footnote to the magnificent statues recovered from the wreck. But one day, an archaeologist noticed something. The corroded mass, drying out after 2,000 years on the seafloor, had split open. And inside, he saw the faint, circular outline of a gear wheel. A gear? It made no sense. Complex, precision gear trains were thought to be an invention of the great cathedral clockmakers of the 14th century, over 1,000 years later. This single gear was an anachronism, a piece of the future, found in the past. But it was just one gear. It could have been a simple toy, a mistake. A strange anomaly. The real investigation wouldn't begin for another 50 years. With the advent of new technology that could see through stone and time. In the 1970s, and then again in the early 2000s with even more advanced equipment, scientists aimed powerful X-ray and CT scanners at the fragile, crumbling fragments. And what they saw would change the history of technology forever. As the ghostly, three-dimensional images began to appear on their computer screens, they weren't just looking at one gear. They were looking at a system, a complex, interlocking universe of them. At least 37 distinct, precision-cut bronze gears, some with over 200 tiny, triangular teeth, each perfectly spaced. Epicyclic gearing, differential gears. A level of mechanical sophistication that was not supposed to be seen again on Earth for another 1,500 years. This wasn't a toy. It wasn't a simple clock. This was something else. This single discovery broke the accepted timeline of human innovation. It proved that at least some ancient Greek scientists had a mastery of mechanical engineering that we previously thought was impossible. It was like finding a jet engine in the tomb of Tutankhamun. The first great mystery, what was inside the box, had been solved. But it opened up two even greater and more profound questions. Who on earth could have built such a thing 2,000 years ago? And for what possible purpose? Would you need a machine this complex? A world of marble and bronze. To answer the question of who could have built this, we must first forget the popular image of ancient Greece. Forget the simple picture of philosophers in white togas, calmly debating ethics in the Parthenon. The world that created the Antikythera Mechanism was not that world. This machine was built in the Hellenistic Age, around the 2nd century BC, a period after the classical Golden Age of Athens, after Alexander the Great had shattered the old world and created a new, interconnected one. It was a different era, a more complex, more competitive, and in many ways, a more technologically advanced age. This was the age of giants. The age of Archimedes of Syracuse, a man who was said to have built giant cranes that could lift Roman warships out of the sea. A man who allegedly created a mechanical sphere, a miniature planetarium that could replicate the complex movements of the sun, moon, and planets. A machine that the Roman statesman Cicero would later describe with absolute awe. This was the age of the Great Library of Alexandria, the single greatest repository of knowledge in the ancient world, where the circumference of the earth was accurately calculated, using nothing more than sticks, shadows, and brilliant mathematics. This wasn't just the work of a few lone geniuses. There was a culture of incredible mechanical engineering. Engineers like Ctesibius and Hero of Alexandria were building water clocks of breathtaking accuracy. They were creating automata, primitive robots powered by steam and water that could open temple doors and pour wine, seemingly by magic. They were obsessed with understanding the rules of the cosmos and replicating those rules in miniature with bronze and wood. So this was the world that created the Antikythera Mechanism, a world of intense intellectual rivalry, of brilliant engineers, and of wealthy patrons with the money to fund their incredible creations. It was not a world of magic or ancient aliens. It was a world of pure human genius. But knowing who could have made it is only half the puzzle. To understand its true purpose, scientists would have to embark on a decades-long journey of digital reconstruction to awaken the ghost in the machine. The ghost in the machine. The mechanism was a ghost, trapped in a tomb of corroded bronze. For decades, scientists could only guess at its true complexity based on a few visible gears. The 82 separate fragments were far too fragile to ever be physically taken apart. To understand the machine, they would have to reconstruct it, virtually, gear by gear, without ever touching it. And so began one of the most complex forensic investigations in history. In the early 2000s, an international team of scientists brought the precious fragments to a specially designed, custom-built 8-ton CT scanner. For weeks, they bombarded the fragments with powerful X-rays, taking thousands of high-resolution digital slices, peeling back the layers of corrosion 1 micron at a time, and slowly, on their computer screens, the ghost began to take shape. One by one, the hidden gears revealed their exact size, their shape, and the precise number of their teeth. The scientists could finally see how they all fit together in 3 dimensions, a beautiful, logical, and impossibly complex puzzle. They could see hidden pin and slot mechanisms that followed the irregular orbit of the moon. They could see tiny axles and intricate interlocking systems that no one had ever known existed. But the scans revealed something else, something just as important as the gears: faint inscriptions. Thousands of tiny Greek characters, some less than a millimeter tall, packed onto every available surface of the machine's plates and dials. It was the machine's instruction manual, hidden in plain sight for 2,000 years. Using another advanced imaging technique that captures light from multiple angles, the scientists could begin to read the unreadable. They found what appeared to be chapter headings. They found paragraphs of detailed Askramless other style. It was a user's guide to the cosmos. The digital reconstruction was now complete. The hidden user manual was finally legible. All the clues were on the table. The investigators had successfully awakened the ghost from its bronze prison. And now, for the first time in 2 millennia, they could finally ask it the most important question of all. What did you do? A map of the cosmos. What did you do? The answer, pieced together from the digital reconstruction and the hidden user manual, was more incredible than any of the investigators had dared to imagine. This was not a simple navigational tool. It was not just a ship's clock. The Antikythera Mechanism was the entire cosmos in a box. The front dial was the public face of the heavens. A single main pointer tracked the position of the sun as it moved through the constellations of the Greek zodiac, showing the date in the Egyptian calendar. A second separate pointer nested within the first tracked the phases of the moon with breathtaking accuracy. It was a sophisticated solar and lunar calendar, uniting the great cycles of the day and the night. But the true genius of the device was hidden on the back. One of the large spiral dials was a Saros cycle predictor. In other words, it predicted eclipses, both solar and lunar. By simply turning the hand crank on the side of the machine, you could align the pointers to any future date, and the machine would tell you, decades in advance, on what day an eclipse would occur, what time it would happen, and even, according to the inscriptions, what color the moon was expected to be. And another dial revealed an even more surprising, more human purpose. It was a calendar for the great Pan-Hellenic Games, a 4-year dial that tracked the timing of the most important sporting and cultural events in their world. The Games at Olympia and the Games at Corinth, Nemea, and Delphi. This wasn't just a scientific instrument. It was a social computer, connecting the entire Greek world. But the most recent scans revealed the machine's final, greatest secret. Faint inscriptions describing the cycles of the planets. Venus, Mercury, and almost certainly others. The mechanism did not just track the sun and moon. It had an impossibly complex system of gears, lost to time, that modeled the strange, wandering retrograde motions of the planets as well. It was a mechanical planetarium, an analog computer that modeled the entire known universe of the ancient Greeks. You would turn the crank and watch the future of the heavens unfold before your very eyes. The ghost in the machine had finally spoken. And it told a story of a scientific and engineering genius that was simply not supposed to exist in the ancient world. Which leads to the darkest question in this entire investigation. If the ancient Greeks could build this, what else could they do? And why was all of this incredible knowledge lost? The lost knowledge. The Antikythera Mechanism isn't just a story about what the ancient world had. It's a haunting story about what they lost. It forces us to confront a terrifying question. What if history is not a straight line of constant progress? What if, for 1,000 years, we went backwards? The world that built this machine, the Hellenistic world of scientific inquiry and mechanical genius, did not last forever. The rise of the Roman Empire, with its focus on practical engineering and military conquest, slowly eclipsed the more theoretical, scientific pursuits of the Greeks. And then came the fires. The Great Library of Alexandria, the single greatest repository of knowledge in the ancient world, a place that held an estimated 500,000 scrolls, was damaged by war, neglected by politics, and ultimately destroyed over centuries. How many other Antikythera blueprints were on those shelves? How many books of lost science and forgotten engineering were turned to ash and smoke? We will never know. With the final collapse of the Roman Empire in the West, Europe plunged into what we call the Dark Ages. The intricate knowledge of gearing, of planetary motion, of complex mathematics vanished. It wasn't just forgotten. In some cases, it was actively suppressed, seen as pagan and unnecessary in a new world defined by faith and survival. For over 1,000 years, the ability to design and create something as mechanically complex as the Antikythera Mechanism was completely lost to humanity. It was a great forgetting. A technological reset button had been pushed. When the makers of the great cathedral clocks in the 14th century began building their complex gear trains, they thought they were pioneers, inventing something new for the glory of God. They had no idea. They were simply reinventing. And that is what makes the Antikythera Mechanism so impossibly precious. It is not just a machine. It is a survivor, a single, battered ghost from a lost world of technological genius. It is the only one of its kind ever found. But it surely was not the only one ever made. Which is why, in the modern world, the quest is no longer just to understand it, but to bring it back to life. The modern resurrection. How do you bring a ghost back to life? How do you resurrect a machine whose original creators left no blueprints, only a single shattered wreck? You do it with a unique collaboration, a team of historians, astronomers, computer scientists, and a group of people who understand the art of goods better than anyone else on Earth. Expert watchmakers. The first step was to build it digitally. Using the super high-resolution CT scan data, scientists at University College London painstakingly created a complete, working 3D model of the entire mechanism inside a computer. They solved the puzzle, placing every one of the 82 fragments into its correct place. For the first time, they could see every gear turn. They could watch the pointers move through the zodiac, predict eclipses, and track the planets, all in a virtual space. They had resurrected the machine's mind, but a digital model is not enough. To truly understand the genius of the ancient Greeks, you have to build it as they would have built it. And so, teams of engineers and horologists have taken on the ultimate challenge: to build working, physical replicas of the Antikythera Mechanism, using the same materials, bronze, wood, and iron, and in some cases, using only the tools and techniques that would have been available to a craftsman in the 2nd century BC. And after years of painstaking, obsessive work, they succeeded. Today, there are several working replicas of the Antikythera Mechanism in the world. And to see one in motion is to watch a miracle. You turn the small hand crank on the side, and a silent, intricate universe of motion begins. Dozens of gears, perfectly calibrated, begin to turn in perfect harmony. The pointers for the sun and moon glide gracefully across the front dial. On the back, the eclipse pointer slowly spirals towards its next prediction. It is a profound, almost spiritual connection to the past. To hold a working replica in your hands is to shake hands with a mind like Archimedes. It proves that the spark of human genius is universal, a timeless fire that connects us across the ages. And seeing this ancient computer, reborn and working perfectly in the modern world, forces us to consider its final, mind-bending legacy. The oldest computer. So what is the final legacy of this incredible object, resurrected from the deep? It is this. The Antikythera Mechanism is, without doubt, the world's first known analog computer. It is definitive proof that our modern digital world of complex machines and algorithms has a history that is far older, far more complex, and far more brilliant than we ever knew. And it leaves us with a staggering thought, a great what-if of history. What if this knowledge had not been lost? What if the scientific and mechanical genius of the Hellenistic Greeks had been allowed to develop, uninterrupted by the fall of empires and the coming of the Dark Ages? If they were building machines like this in the 2nd century BC, where would humanity be today? Would the Industrial Revolution have begun 1,000 years earlier? Would we have been exploring the stars in the age of Shakespeare? We can only wonder. The mechanism is a powerful, humbling reminder that history is not a straight, unbroken line of progress, always moving upwards. It is a fragile thing. Knowledge can be lost. Genius can be forgotten. Entire worlds of innovation can vanish from existence, leaving behind only a single corroded ghost to tell their tale. And it leaves us with one final, tantalizing question. The Antikythera Mechanism was found completely by accident, a 1 in a billion chance discovery, made by sponge divers who were blown off course in a storm. It makes you wonder, how many other impossible objects are still out there? How many other secrets, how many other lost worlds of knowledge are still lying silent under the shifting sands or in the crushing darkness of the deep, just waiting to be found?